Hello everybody, welcome back to Hidden Harvest with Liz. Today we're going to be talking about 2024 gardening. That's the plan anyway. I've got a lot of plans for next year's garden and a lot of preparation that has to be done during the winter season in order to get ready for said garden. Namely trying to catch all of the deals so I can get my raised beds. So I was actually going over all of the stuff and things that I need to think about while preparing the garden and whether or not it's even a good location, how I need to orient things inside that space and everything else like that. So I was figuring while I'm considering these ideas, perhaps I should take you along for the ride. And of course, I have a notebook for my what ifs, which is right here. And thank you. It is now named the What Ifipedia. I'm gonna put that on the outside of it. I need to figure out how to write first, properly, not like these. That I'm just going to show you and you guys can like zoom in and make fun of and everything else like that. But first things first, let's go to the things to consider when putting together a garden. And I know it is exceedingly retro to the point of almost probably cringe. I don't know that I'm doing all this on paper. I was actually going to try and do this on my computer so you guys can see it. I have a drawing app, I have drawing tablets, but the tablet that actually has a screen where you could see what I'm drawing and I can see what I'm drawing won't connect to my PC for some reason. And the other one that will connect to my PC doesn't actually allow me to manipulate the page the way the other tablet does. So that's kind of the reason why I moved over to the other tablet, is because I had better features. But that's neither here nor there. I'm going to try and figure that out for later on. For right now, let's worry about what we can do with what we get. And right now what I've got is paper and pens and notebooks and what else have I got over here? Tape. Post-it notes. Yeah, we'll use all those things. Anyway, okay, aside from horrible handwriting, it's just things to consider for the new garden. The biggest thing is location. So you want to pick a place that has like 8 hours-ish plus of sun during the summertime. And if you plan on doing like fall gardening and winter gardening, you will also have to check because the sun's location and where it casts shadows and everything will change as the seasons change. Like right now, I have got sun that goes from the side of my house to the other side of my house instead of over the top of my house to the other side of my house. So it actually sits below tree line for most of the day. I mean, we do get some parts of the sun where it's like full sun in good areas and stuff like that, but the rest of the time it's, I don't know, dappled sun maybe. And the areas where I was starting to put some of my flower beds, they don't hardly get any sun at all during the winter time. So if I'm going to put a garden in that area, I would probably have to make sure that the areas that I used for the winter garden were the parts that were indeed in full sun, not some of the other areas. So that's one thing, is your sun, the way the sun moves in your sky. Not getting low-lying ground, and by low-lying ground I mean like the area that gets really, really sopping wet every time a storm happens and it just holds on to all of the water. Obviously, don't pick a part where someone's been tearing apart cars and stuff like that for years and years and years. Get soil tests if you need to. What about, microbiomes? Make sure you pay attention to certain microbiomes because there's certain areas of your yard and you might have to actually walk around different times of the day, seasons and stuff like that to fully know the area where you're planning on putting your garden at. And there might be like an area because of the way it sits, because of the ground cover, because of what's in that area, it might be cooler or hotter than the areas around it. Case in point, if you have a south-facing wall that is brick or something like that, that south-facing wall will gather up some of the heat during the day and slowly release it. And because of that, the area right next to the wall would probably be warmer than your normal yard area. So pay attention to stuff like that. Or of course, if you have like overhanging trees, the underbrush of the tree area, you might want to use some of that, but you're going to have to remember it's probably going to be colder, but while it's shade and colder, it may not get as much frost as some of the other areas. It might be protected. You have to check the area to find out how your particular area works. And obviously you need to know what your grow zone is and everything else like that. The only time it's really going to make a huge amount of difference what your grow zone is, like right now, they just redid the map for the grow zones, which didn't change a whole lot. Just because they changed the map doesn't mean your climate has changed, so do what you've normally been doing. The only time it really comes into play is when you have perennials. What is the coldest cold that you average get during your winter time. And that's what the grow zone is. Right now, I think we're in 7A, not 7A, but 8A or 8B. I can't really tell because we're right there on the edge of it. So we were in 7B, but just because they gave us an extra area doesn't mean that my climate is suddenly going to change. All it means is they collected 30 years worth of data and they discarded the old years worth of data, which was like the 80s. And apparently there was like a blizzard or something that happened in the 80s, or a cold spell or something like that. And because of those numbers being knocked off of their census for the 30 years, the elevations have changed. I have no idea exactly how all that works, guys, but I can tell you for most people's gardens, vegetable gardens and stuff like that, nothing has changed. Your average frost dates, your first frost and your last frost are really the dates you have to pay attention to. Your coldest date will only come into play if you're trying to plant like fruit trees. That's another consideration. So we've got location, light, your low areas, your microbiome, accessibility. If you have any issues with like mobility itself, if you're having a hard time getting down on the ground to work in the garden, you might want to get a raised bed. If you have back issues, you might want to make not so deep a bed. I would say if you have really bad back issues, make sure none of your beds are over 2 feet wide, because that means you don't have to lean that far into them. And if you are, your back gets sore after a while, maybe 4 across, just walk your way around the other side so you can get a little bit more grow room. That's what I'm going to do is 4, because if I do like 6 or something like that, the way I figure I'm not going to lean into the bed and have to put my hand down in it. I would probably step into the bed because my back would have to hold all of the weight, and I don't have a great back. So I'm doing at the most 4, but I'm going to treat it as 2 different beds. I'll just walk around the sides. So making sure that you take account any accessibility issues, whether or not someone who's going to be working on it is wheelchair bound. You want to make sure that the beds are far enough apart that their wheelchair can easily go in there and maneuver everywhere that it needs to go. What other considerations would there be as far as accessibility? Another accessibility is not necessarily accessibility. It's more like keeping it in your mind, because it's easy to say, I'm just going to make what I already have in the house, or I'm going to order something, or we'll grab something from the store, when your garden is so far away from your house that it's like inconvenient to have to go out and grab something. Now, I would definitely recommend having, if you have the ability to, not everybody does, but if you have the ability to make like a couple of different zones of your garden. Like, okay, you have your house, then maybe you have like zone 1 for yourself, which is like right along your house area. And inside that zone, you might keep, I don't know, a couple of flowers that you really, really like your favorite cut flowers that you want to bring in for a vase or something like that. And then herbs that you use regularly. Like every single meal, you have to have this herb. For me, it's cilantro. I absolutely love cilantro. I will sprinkle it in everything. Green onions, it's another one that I like to put into everything. So I would take those 2, and probably basil. Basil is one that I like a whole lot too. Not so much rosemary. Rosemary, I gotta be in the mood for it. So those would probably be the ones that I would keep near the house in like pots, or maybe a small raised bed or something like that I would put towards my house in zone 1. And then maybe my further zone would be the first set of my gardening beds that are closest to the house, and they would be the ones that I'm constantly going back and forth to get. And that might be something like celery, because I would go out, pick a couple of stalks of celery, and then take them back inside and cook. Or maybe radishes or lettuce, something that I would normally get several of, or cut and come again type of crops that I would put towards the house. And then the rest of the beds would be things that I'm growing for the final harvest of it, like corn, or I don't know, what else would fit into that one? There's a lot that would fit into that one. Corn, bush beans, determinate tomatoes, all that kind of stuff would go a little bit further in, because you're going to have to go out with the intention to harvest rather than just to go out to get a couple of groceries to cook your dinner that night. So that would be like 3 zones, one right close to your house, or even in your kitchen if you've got room for a couple of little pots of your favorite herbs or whatever inside your kitchen. That might be your zone 1. And then your zone 2 are the ones that are very close to your bed, and then your zone 3 are the other ones. And then your zone 4, if you even have that much land, and you're lucky if you have that much land, because I'm going to have a zone 4. It's just not going to be very big, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is such a stupid idea. I don't really have room for an orchard. I say orchard because it's going to be a couple of fruiting trees or whatever, so I'm going to call it my orchard, because I can be extravagant if I want to, just like I'm going to have a vineyard full of 2 vines. And Only one of them could possibly make wine, but it's going to be a vineyard. Anyway, oh, some of the other things to think about whenever you're doing your garden would be like how close it is to everything else that you need for it. Like, where are you going to store all of your fertilizer, your soil, your everything that you're going to need for it, your shovels, your wheelbarrow, all of your tools. Where are you going to store all of that, and how close is it to your garden? Where is your water source? How close is it to the place where you want to put your garden? Are you going to have a greenhouse? Is it going to be very close to your garden? Are you going to have a compost? How close is it to your garden? Because once you get to the point where you're cleaning beds out, it's kind of exhausting. So trying to get the stuff from point A to point B and making sure that you don't, I don't know, me personally, if I'm already exhausted, I'm more likely to slack off on something like composting and not do it, when composting is probably one of the best ways to supplement your garden, and actually one of the freer ways to do it, because if you have to go and buy your fertilizer, it gets really, really expensive. So if you compost, you can put some of the nutrients that grew and everything else like that back into your soil for the next year. So is it close to your compost bin? How close is it to your animals? Say you've got rabbits or you've got chickens or something like that, and you're giving them little scraps from your garden and everything. How close are they? So all of those considerations, your water, how close you are to everything that you're going to need for it, and if possible, if you want to move those items closer to it, because right now I'm actually moving my garden closer to my water source, well, one of my water sources, and out of the area that I was in because it was hard getting water hoses. So here's the sketch that I've got. I know all of that was a lot of information, and I do apologize. I was like an info dump. But it's honestly the stuff that I just got done researching so I could do a sketch for my garden, and it's a horrible sketch. Don't even worry about it. But it's a sketch nonetheless because I've been agonizing over this whole time. So, I've got my barn, which is actually a garage. This is where I'm going to be storing all of the stuff that needs to sit back. Like, I'm hoping a couple of grow areas for whenever I need cool grow areas. Like when I'm starting my fall crops, I'll have a couple of sun lamps and some ventilation inside that room. But it's also going to be where I'm storing some of my not compost. Well, maybe compost. If I get bags of compost or bags of soil or something, that's probably where I'm going to store everything. And then we've got my driveway. And over here is the greenhouse. Now, obviously, whenever I showed it the last time, the greenhouse high tunnel thing that we were trying to create didn't actually stand up. So my husband and I have been talking. We're going to do the kind of a cheaper version-ish of an Amazon-ish greenhouse to see how we like having a greenhouse and if it's actually useful before we go investing in anything that might be something I don't even wind up using. So we're going to start with that, and there's like a concrete pad that's beside it, so that's going to be a good place for me to put like a couple of places to put tables and things. So I can do, I don't know, I can imagine me sitting there on a stool or something like that, potting up a couple of things on that concrete area, or things that I'm cleaning, or things that I'm working on, or if I just harvest something and I need to get some of like the extra greens off of it or something like that while I'm still outside, it would be a good place to do it. That way I can get it to the compost instead of taking it inside and then having to bring it back outside to compost it. So that concrete pad being right outside is what I was thinking for that part. And then I have got my my vineyard, which is going to be my scuppling vines. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to try and grow any grapes. I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I might dabble in the grapes, but I know I'm going to be growing the scuppling vines or muscadine vines because those just take me back to my childhood. They make really good jelly, and you can make a moonshine with it. I'm not saying that's what I'm going to use it for, but if I was looking for something that might be considered currency in a bad time, moonshine would probably be one of them, so I might make some of that. And then I would also do like blueberries, raspberries, those kind of things, because some jelly would be really, really good. And I think that's where those are going to start out. And then we've got the chicken coop. These are not precise drawings. No way have I measured anything out if you can't tell by the squiggly lines and everything. But the chicken coop is going to be right here between the greenhouse and the garden. So if there's scraps or something like that that I want to bring out to the chickens, I can easily do that. And the house that we'll actually be living in is right down here. So we would be moving from the porch up along the vineyard up to the greenhouse and then into the garden. And then of course I've got my garden beds. Now the issue is we are predicting it will take about 12 beds to fill the area. I'm having a hard time visualizing this because I have time and time again told myself I'm going to quit trying to visualize measurements. I'm not good at it. I can't eyeball something and say, yeah, that's probably 6 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches. How big is my monitor? I don't even know. I would actually have to measure it. I don't do the eye measuring very, very well. So whenever my husband was like, yeah, I think 12 beds would fit here. And I'm like, okay. So that's when I'm going to start ordering, but I have no idea how to visualize these. The thing that I was having an issue with is earlier I was talking about the sun and how it decides to go during the springtime as opposed to the fall time. And let me get my orientation correct here. The sun will actually go this way across my yard during the summertime and goes this way across my yard during the fall. So hopefully during the hottest parts of the month, these areas over here, there's a tree here and a tree here over across the yard. These areas here will actually be for my crops that need extra shade, like when I'm trying to grow, I don't know, spinach, cilantro, something like that during the summertime that would easily bolt because it's too hot. I would put those in the beds in the shade. So capturing some of this shade for some of those would be really, really awesome because right now the two places I have are very, very hot. Whenever the sun hits overhead, there's no shade at all. These areas would probably be getting dappled sun. And then they would get some like afternoon sun. So it'll start going down. It'll start cooling down around that area. But during the wintertime, these beds that are over here would have to be where I plant my fall crop because these are going to get the most shade. The most sun. As a matter of fact, I have a bed here and here. And this one hardly gets any sunlight. The stuff wasn't really growing, and this one gets sun. So it's actually helping me visualize these are the beds that I would have to use. So, I also have like on the other side of the driveway, I've got 2 leaf pile areas because I really need to capture all of those. I was really hoping I would have my beds out before now. Of course, the holidays come in and you take care of the holidays and then you worry about stuff like that. But in case you are at the point where you have the option to, what I'm planning on doing for each of my garden beds is setting them into place, putting cardboard down after I get them leveled out a bit, put cardboard down, dig out a little bit because we've got crabgrass or Bermuda grass, whatever you want to call it. They're basically the same thing and just as annoying. They're horrible. But we have that kind of grass over there. What I'm probably going to do is dig down, put cardboard down, and then what I want to do is take these leaf piles that I have sitting up here because I've already got one of them full. And there are tons more leaves out there. I would like to fill every single one of those up with leaves. Just leaves and whatever scraps from the garden and scraps from the kitchen and stuff like that that I get during the year would go into each one of these beds. And then I would top them off with more leaves. That way, whenever it comes to in the springtime, actually filling them up, they'll be about half full of leaf compost, which would be amazing. So if you have that option, these are the thoughts that I'm having. I can't enact on them right now, but try that out and tell me how it works because right now, since I don't have all of my beds that are going to have to go over there, I don't necessarily want to start placing beds because I might have to rearrange them. The way that I'm thinking is because of the way the sun comes in, I'm going to have to put them long ways this way to make sure that more sun goes over the entire area. In each section, the back area is going to have to be the tallest crop. But I'm trying to figure out ways to put in trellises. So I guess I would have to do it like every couple of places to put a trellis because I really want some trellises. This area right here is right next to the road, and I would like some trellises to offer a little bit of privacy, you know? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I have been babbling for a long time. Hopefully Editing Liz can do something with this information. But those are all the considerations that I have been thinking of. I have been researching to try and figure out how I'm going to do the garden, where I'm going to put the garden at. I've pretty much already picked the spot, but because I'm going through all of these things and thinking about all of this stuff and the layout and how I want to set it up, I was figuring I would talk to you guys about it because, you know, you might be doing the same thing. You might be planning your first garden, planning your 20th garden, who knows? And there might be something different to think about. Who knows? You might be expanding your garden into an area and you're like, oh yeah, I probably should think about that. I haven't had a new garden area in like 5 years. I probably should do a soil test or pay attention to whether or not the sun goes over that area. I haven't really thought about that. Well, Hopefully that helps somebody. I don't know. Basically saying it out loud helps me remember and think about it. So I'm hoping it helped somebody, anybody. You guys, let me know what you think. Are you guys growing a garden this year? I would love to hear about it. What is your favorite plant that you plan on growing in your 2024 garden? I think right now, I'm hoping my garlic turns out okay. I'm very curious. Plus my tomatoes. I miss my tomatoes. I really miss my tomatoes. I will see you guys next time. You have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and you stay shiny. Bye!